Now, this is an interesting story. It doesn't matter how much you're willing to shell out. The avian flu means there's a shortage of eggs on supermarket shelves. But rather than scrambling to find eggs for meals, Veg SA says it could be time for some self-reflection. I think I'm included in that. The Food Awareness Organization says we consume too much egg and poultry products loaded with antibiotics, and that infectious diseases in animal products have increased at more than 4 times the rates of prior decades. It says there are healthy alternatives to eggs that provide even more protein and are environmentally sustainable. Veg SA Director Donovan Will speaks to us now. Thanks so much for your time, Donovan. I'm absolutely flabbergasted by this, and I was actually having this discussion with my colleagues in the newsroom before this interview, and I said, how on earth is there an alternative to eggs, and why should there be an alternative to eggs? But there's actually a healthier version. Maybe just tell us a little bit more about what you have found.
Well, so I think the first thing we really need to just acknowledge in this situation is that it is a nuanced, complicated situation, and we know that there are people whose livelihoods are on the line, and there are people who are really worried about getting enough protein. But that said, it's very simple that humans don't need animal products. We don't need eggs to get all of our protein. And it doesn't have to be some high-tech, strange thing. In order to get enough protein, beans and legumes and even things like rice have enough protein for us. But now we do also have these amazing products that are being brought out that mimic the taste and texture of eggs, like Just Egg in America. So we have these alternatives that taste like eggs, and we also have the natural whole food options that are just as healthy and are actually often cheaper gram for gram of protein.
Very important point you touch on here. Part of your findings, or what you have indicated, is that South Africans almost have an addiction to eggs. But we have to also contextualize how eggs are part of our diet, and it's a cheaper alternative. It caters to households that can't afford alternative protein, or that don't know an alternative protein that is cheaper than eggs, and it's definitely an easier option. But you'll tell us that that's actually not the case.
Well, I mean, it depends how you define easy and cheap. So again, if you're eating even a can of lentils, you can get that protein. And there's a bigger issue that we really want people to be really thinking about, and that's the issue of these pandemics. Or these influenza diseases. We've just come out of a huge pandemic, but no one's talking about the fact that these factory farms are breeding grounds for zoonotic diseases. And avian flu can infect humans. There are humans who have died of this disease. It's obviously very rare at the moment, but we don't know when the next mutation is going to come about, when it's going to be way easier to jump to humans. And so obviously you don't want to fearmonger, but we've just come out of this pandemic, and it feels like we've learned nothing, where the response to this huge outbreak is, oh, we're just going to kill more chickens. We're going to hopefully vaccinate in 6 months' time, but we're not going to look at the underlying cause, as the images are showing, of confining thousands, if not 10,000s of chickens into one room and feed them with antibiotics and hope that they don't get diseases. We really need to relook at how we're farming these chickens in the first place.
I want to just you to elaborate a little bit more on this, Donovan, because we are seeing more and more outbreaks, more than usual, and it seems to be getting worse in actual fact. Why do you think this keeps happening? What is the bigger problem here? Because, when you look at an egg, you think to yourself, okay, it should be fine if I cook it, like if I fry it or boil it or whatever you use your eggs for. But you're saying that there is actually a bigger problem, and it seems to be getting worse and worse throughout the years.
Yeah, so it's definitely getting worse. As the stats that you read out earlier said, the rates of how often these avian influenza diseases are breaking out is getting worse. And again, we don't know where the next one is going to come and be even worse. And why are we waiting so long? And so if we keep farming the way that we're farming, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And it's very clear that part of the reason is that the results that we're looking for are just trying to protect the financial interests. We're not trying to protect the industry, the public at large. That's not what the responses that we're seeing are doing. The responses are trying as hard as we can to protect the financial interests of an industry. If we were really trying to protect people from the next pandemic, or if we were trying to protect people from, not getting enough protein, we would be talking to the public about where else they could get their protein from. We'd be talking to farmers more and saying to the farmers, we can't farm the way we have been farming. Just culling millions and millions and millions of chickens is not the solution.
I want to ask you what the alternative is, though. I mean, you've spoken about lentils and legumes and tofu. I cannot stomach tofu, but what is the alternative? Because as I've mentioned, South Africans really rely on eggs because it's seen as the cheaper and easier alternative. I'm going to admit it live on TV that I possibly have about 3 eggs a day, and I've increased it because of training purposes. But I mean, I see it as such a big source of protein, and I mean, you're telling me that that's actually not necessary. There are other alternatives. So I'm really keen to know what these alternatives are.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely was with you on that. When I was at university, when I was training a lot, I was eating way more than 3 eggs a day. And I also love the taste of eggs. So I think one of the things we really have to do as a plant-based industry is teach people how to cook tofu properly. Because again, I used to also not like tofu, but I almost never see people, even at top restaurants, the tofu is cooked absolutely terribly. So I would love to come and cook you some tofu and get you to try it and see that it's good. But there are many different things. Obviously, many people are eating eggs in baked goods, and there are things like, you can make what we call a flax egg out of flax living. We just don't need them.
Certainly. Very insightful. Thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it, and I'll look at having a chickpea omelette tomorrow morning. Thank you so much. That was Veg SA Director Donovan